Achtung. Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray and James Holland, the Second World War podcast with all your Second World War podcasting needs catered to. Now, Jim, people can probably tell from the ambience on the microphone that we're not in our normal recording setup.
No,
right?
we're certainly not. We're in something rather special, aren't we?
In fact, we're about to take part in a bilateral conference in the room where they do bilateral conferences at number 10 Downing Street. It's been one of those days. It's just been quite surreal for quite a length of it. And so how better to round that off than by asking the Prime Minister a few questions.
Yes, Sir Keir Starmer. And this might not be his first ever podcast as Prime Minister, but it is the first history podcast he's done.
Yeah.
And, you know, here we are. It's a week of VE Day 80.
Eat that, all the other history podcasts.
Yeah, bro.
So one of the things we've done since we came in this room, and the cabinet room is beneath us in the building here.
Yes.
You look out that window, that's the Rose Garden, where
The famous conversation happened.
the conversation that no one knows the content of, except that once Churchill came back into number 10, he'd got what he wanted out of Halifax.
He wasn't going to resign. He wasn't going to bring down the government. We were going to fight on and win the war.
I know, but and that is one of
That is actually basically it.
the all-time decisive moments of Second World War history happened out of that window, Jim.
Out of that window, and there it is. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you see how it fits onto Horse Guards Parade.
Yeah.
There's the hedge.
Yep.
And the other thing about number 10 is it's so much bigger.
Yes, it's a bit TARDIS-y.
It's very TARDIS-y.
You go in through that. I mean,
Very interesting artwork on the walls.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's someone from the number 10 staff in the background here. She's smiling because she's heard this conversation a squillion times as people have come in here and gone, it's much bigger on the inside, isn't it? I can't believe it. Where does it end? What is really amazing is being about in a room where
Great men have been.
Great men, great women, historic figures have met, and where some of the most important decisions in global history have been made.
And now, of course, we've got the most important conversation in podcasting history. It is the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Sir Keir Starmer. Hello.
How are you? Nice to see you again.
And you. And you. Thank you.
How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Am I here?
Yes.
That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Delicious
Enjoyed it.
Victoria sponge.
Thank you. I baked it all morning.
Very good sausage rolls.
It's really good. But I thought it was just really nice to sort of get everybody there. You could see the enjoyment people were getting from it.
Yeah, it's great. D-Day Darlings are fantastic too.
Oh, they're brilliant. They're really
Brilliant.
brilliant. Yeah.
But Prime Minister, I wanted to ask you, I mean, you've been in the job for 10 months, and obviously you are having a feeling for the pressures of being a Prime Minister. What do you think it must have been like to be a wartime Prime Minister?
Oh, incredibly pressured, a huge sense of responsibility. You can sense that by reading about it, watching films, and by walking around here. If you haven't done it yet, come and have a look at the cabinet room in a minute before you go, genuinely, because the sense that in that room decisions were being made about the war, about the country, the sense of responsibility. The first duty of Prime Minister is to keep the country safe, to keep people safe. I mean, it is the most important duty. But I think by being here in the same space, sitting in the same chairs, around the same table, you get a real sense of what that must have been like. Obviously very different to the position we're in now. I'd just say two other additional things. Firstly, I spend quite a lot of time with President Zelensky.
Yes.
And therefore, I see firsthand what he is doing in his leadership in Ukraine over the last 3+ years, which is really incredible.
He's impressive.
He's really impressive, and never ever forget he was offered safe passage out of the country in the first week of the conflict.
And he was a comedian. I mean, that's the other thing. Which
He said, I don't need a ride,
like.
I need ammunition. And I'm not sure that he thought he was walking into that. But the final thing on that I'd just say is, in the work we're doing with Ukraine, in the work we're doing on defence and security in Europe, and saying we've got to do more on defence spend, higher sustained increase since the Cold War, corralling allies to do the same and to come together, I feel a personal responsibility for the fact that we've enjoyed 80 years of peace by and large, and today's a sort of celebration and remembrance of that. But my duty is the same duty as all Prime Ministers, to keep the country safe, and therefore it's my duty to make sure that we have that peace for decades to come.
Yep.
That's why we're doing the work to hold.
But can I just say that is unbelievably cheering to hear that, because I feel that very, very strongly.
Yeah, it is really so important. So NATO has been the cornerstone of that peace for 80 years, the sort of greatest alliance the world has ever seen in many respects. I'm absolutely determined to play my part to make sure it's not just something we look back on with pride, it's something that actually delivers for decades to come. And so behind the we must support Ukraine, which we must, because it's the right thing to do, is also a sense that we must hold the alliance together for all of our generations. And today sort of brings that into quite sharp relief, because you get a sense from the events of today of what it must have been like, but also a real sense of that responsibility to make sure that for generations to come. That's why it was good to have young people out there as well. Who are going to
get that message across.
Get that message out there in terms of what's going on. So it's been quite an amazing day in many respects. It always is. I mean, you must have had this talking to veterans. Every story is a different story. They come alive for me in different ways every time I hear them. Just two examples of that. My son is now 16. When I now meet a veteran who was 17 when they ran up the beaches in Normandy, it's taken on a whole... I've been on those beaches a number of times, including before we had children, and it's quite incredible to think how on earth would anybody have run up here and going into, into gunfire. To think of my own boy, I mean, he's 16, so in a year's time or 2 years' time, because many of them were about that age, is quite something. And then hearing today, this was at the Buckingham Palace event we did, there was a woman there, and she said, I was outside these gates on VE Day, chanting, "We want the king, we want the king." And she said they were doing the Congo and chanting, "We want the king." And to hear her describe what she was doing then was really, really incredible.
He was a great man, George VI.
Oh,
one of our greatest models.
Really incredible. And then there was also one of the veterans I met today. That's why every story is different. He's now just turned about, I think, 101. Right. He was with his daughter, and his daughter said that until 6 years ago, he'd never told them that he was at Normandy. He said he'd been in the war. They didn't really know what he did. And then 6 years ago, he said, "I want to go back to France. I want to go and see my mates," meaning the people who didn't come back with him. For her, that opened her eyes. She had no idea.
Wow, amazing.
My own grandfather fought in the army in the Second World War.
Oh, did he?
Did he?
I have no idea. He was just like
the MOD.
He was just like
you must know
he was
someone at
just.
the MOD.
I mean, he locked down. He locked down. I mean, it's just like the different ways people. So some of the veterans go back every year or every time they can. Some won't go back. These are incredible personal vignettes and stories of how people are. It's really incredible.
Is a day like today, VE Day, is really important to remember, though, isn't it? To highlight these stories, to highlight what the country went through, isn't it? We can't stop doing this, even though the war generation are fading away, right?
I think we need to do it even more, because the lived experience is reducing all of the time, for obvious reasons. So we need to do it whilst we've got veterans with us to tell their personal stories. And there's no substitute. You can't read a briefing and have the same impact to somebody telling you their story about what they did.
Gone? I mean, where's the legacy go after they've
We need to record. I mean, we are recording their stories, but we also then need to, in a sense, even more have the celebration and the reminders, because it's a hugely important part of our history of which we should be extremely proud as a country. It was a moment of peril for us and the world, where the values of freedom and democracy prevailed. I've got children who live in peace and in a democracy as a result of what other people, which is incredible. And then, the reminder with the Ukrainian contingent on the procession, that the idea that this was all just history and it doesn't matter now somehow is completely wrong. Those values of freedom and democracy matter today. That's exactly what is being fought about in Ukraine. And then it was brilliant, just the spontaneous. I don't know whether you saw as they came up past the
everyone cheered.
The King and the Queen.
I thought they were fantastic.
Oh, it was brilliant.
They were absolutely brilliant.
But what a reminder that this is not just a sort of part of our history; it's part of our now. and nothing must be taken for granted. So that's why I do think it's important that we continue to celebrate, to remember, to have events like this.
Well, I've got to say, you're absolutely preaching to the converted here. I mean, this is very on message with us.
Yeah, but that's why it's really good you're capturing it as well, and you've got some of the stuff outside, I hope.
Yeah.
But also the sheer joy of, I mean, it is uplifting, you know, people coming together, coming to London.
People coming together and sharing this commemoration is really important. You're roughly of the same generation as me, I think. Did you grow up on Second World War films? And if so, which is your favourite?
Well, I mean, Saving Private Ryan is always a
Right.
favourite, I think, of me and many people. Yes, we did. I mean, we didn't watch a lot of television when I was growing up.
Right.
That was just one of the things my parents didn't particularly approve of us watching television all the time. They were worried that, you know, it would ruin our lives.
corrupted.
We'd never achieve anything because we're watching too much television. So they kept. So we didn't actually watch a lot of television. But you do. The movies do bring it to life.
Yeah.
In quite a powerful way, I think. But it's quite interesting watching our son learn history and learn about the Second World War for the first. Because for us, it's sort of, I know it's hardwired in a sense. We know the history. We all remember it. But to see a teenager learn for the first, you know, to actually go through it for the first time and begin to study and understand it, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And quite inspiring in its own way.
Well, it's so compelling because of the richness of the human drama as much as anything else. But one thing I just wanted to ask you is that, obviously, you know, the United States in the late 1930s was merging out of the Great Depression and became the richest nation in the world through becoming the arsenal of democracy. In other words, by industrialising, it was able to kind of get rich on it as well. Do you think there's a case for rearming to boost economic growth?
Not just to boost economic growth, but the two...
But as well.
The two go to... No, I think it's a really important question. So I'm absolutely convinced that we have to increase our spend on security and defence. And I don't just mean more money as a percentage, although I do mean that. That's at the bedrock of it. We need to learn the lessons of the Ukraine conflict. I was very struck last time I went there just a few weeks ago with how the fighting has changed. The use of drones has massively increased the sophistication of them. So,
And yet people are still in trenches.
so and so there's a real mixture of sort of old and new, if you like, there. But we have to up defence spend. We have to coordinate and cooperate better across Europe, in my view. We have to share more of the burden collectively as Europeans. But in direct answer to your question, what comes with that, which is obviously national security, defence,
DSR Bank,
but also economic security, because these are good, well-paid jobs in defence that come with this, and they are in the big defence-heavy sectors. But then for all of that, you've got supply chains. We had small and medium-sized businesses in here as part of the hub initiative that we've got. That
Great.
Some of the defence spend will go to the smaller companies that are providing the parts into...
just as they did in Britain in the war and they did in the United States in the war.
And the other thing that really struck me then, and also when I go to Barrow and places, is people who are highly skilled, good jobs, secure jobs, but they've got a little badge of pride inside, because, as I say to them, you know, I get to thank those you know, who are serving, who are literally on the front line. But if you in Barrow or wherever weren't doing what you did, then they wouldn't have the best capability to go with it. And I think, therefore, the defence sector's got that additional sort of bit of pride in it, if you like, which is really important.
Well, national pride and a sense of nationhood are really, really important, aren't they? I mean, one of the things that's interesting, you know, when one looks back to 1938 and the Munich crisis, one of the problems that Chamberlain faced was that 92% of the country were against going to war, and in a democracy that makes life very difficult if you sort of think, well, yeah, maybe we should be. I mean, how does one go about mobilising the nation for a kind of sort of a shift in emphasis in terms of what we need to be doing for defence?
I think a number of things have to come together. The nation has to feel that there's a sense of insecurity. I do feel that most people think that now. I've been quite, you know, going around the country. If you say to people, we're living in a more unstable world at the moment than we were, there's a lot of agreement with that. sentiment. I was really struck with the Churchill reading that we had at, was it midday at the beginning of the procession?
with Timothy Spall.
The words to capture the nation's thinking and spirit were really incredible from Churchill, as they always were and always are in a way. So all that has to come together. I do think there is, when we say we're going into a new era for defence and security, which we are at the moment, I think most people do appreciate that, do know that it matters that we're able to defend our values, defend our freedoms, and play our part. I think that by bringing together sort of what we're calling the coalition of the willing in Europe, particularly with the work that I've been able to do with Emmanuel Macron, there is a sense across the country that people want their country. They want to be proud of the country. They want to know that at a moment of need, we are able to and do step up as a country, which we do and have done historically. And we're, I hope, showing again that in the current circumstances with the conflict in Ukraine,
I mean,
coalition of willing will do that.
The coalition of willing is it's exactly what we want to be hearing, because if you think about D-Day is the kind of apogee of coalition warfare, of coordination, of cooperation, of a singleness of purpose, of coming together with different nations who've got different needs, different requirements, different end goals, but the main goal: get rid of Nazi Germany, get rid of Imperial Japan. Absolute singleness of purpose.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one of the things of the coalition of the willing was this sense that we've established this year, I think, for the first time in a while, which is if you're really going to make a difference, you have to go at the speed of those that want to go furthest. Not when you've got a group of or a coalition of any sort, the temptation is always to go at the speed of the country that wants to move most slowly or is more cautious for different reasons. I think what we've done with the coalition of the willing is to break through that and say, no, if we go at the pace of the sort of most reluctant or most cautious member, then we're going to be going very slowly and not very far. Therefore, we needed to break the dynamic of that.
Speed it up.
Yeah, and I mean, D-Day is quite incredible.
Well, and the other thing, you think about Churchill and the Mulberry harbours, these two giant harbours, both bigger than the size of Dover, created all around the country from different manufacturing firms, building firms, then floated across the channel and put in place. And halfway through, they realised that they just thought, we can't do this. And Churchill just said, don't argue the matter, the problems will answer for themselves.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I think sometimes when you look, D-Day is a really big example of that. How on earth did that happen?
It's quite
amazing.
And an era before email and spreadsheets and
WhatsApp.
Just the organisation, the coming together, the different roles that people played. It really is. And the sheer difficulty of the task. Landing and running up the beach, sustaining it, was really quite incredible.
Well, Prime Minister, thanks so much for giving us some of your time.
Not at all. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for being part of it.
Oh, again, the sausage rolls are very high quality. You could basically lure me into any situation if there's good sausage rolls.
Sausage rolls and cucumber sandwiches.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And
Not at all.
And it's great to hear what you're saying about unity of purpose and coalition of the willing.
Thank you very much
for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
That was twice as long as we thought we were going to get with the PM there. We were offered 8 minutes, and that's more than a quarter of an hour. Mainly, Jim, because you were like a dog with a bone then.
Okay, I wasn't going to be. I was going to just give him kind of platitude. No, I wasn't. I absolutely wasn't. And then suddenly you started talking about the need for defence and, the most important thing of a Prime Minister's duty is to defend the nation. I was like, yes, absolutely.
I thought it was very interesting, though. He came in with the thing he was going to say, and then we actually ended up having a conversation with him, which is the thing you don't very often see with politicians, where they come with the thing they're going to say it, and if you ask them again, they're going to say it again. And actually, it was really, really, that was interesting. I think
he said all the right things.
I think at the start when he said that cabinet room is where those decisions were made, was that he can relate to not to that exact feeling, but that you're in these places where these things happen, which is, after all, what we were talking about while we were waiting. You look out the road,
looking out the window, going, "That was where," because literally behind us is that garden.
And I think And that was very interesting. I mean, again, what I was getting from it, what I would want to draw from it, is that reminds you that Winston Churchill, for instance, is just a human being. It's just a person sat in that chair over there, the same way Keir Starmer was a minute ago. That actually, it's people doing this. Churchill, for all the mythology around him, is a politician, being a politician, dealing with a series of impossible situations piling up on him. But he's flesh and blood, just like you and me, and that's the sense I really got there. And of course, there's the simple fact we're very fortunate to get access. Here's an open society for you, right? We do our podcast where we wang on to one another about the Second World War in a spirit of enthusiasm and hopefully expertise, and we've actually been able to ask someone who sits in that cabinet office, in the cabinet room downstairs,
as a political leader of our nation, after all,
makes those kind of decisions. Today has been a very interesting day because I thought a lot of the ceremony today was very good at keying it to the people who did the things that happened 80 years ago. These aren't mythic events. They aren't. No. It's not larger than life people. It's people doing it, and they're facing the challenges the way that people always have. That's what I quite like about whenever the answers to the questions we were getting or the questions we were asking. It reminded me that
I've got to say,
a politician 80 years ago is a politician now.
Yes, I agree with that. But also he was saying all the things that I wanted to hear.
Yeah, I know.
But he was saying them with a fairly heavy degree of conviction, I would say.
Yeah.
We were saying. I mean, he could have easily said, "Well, you can see the Second World War, interest in the Second World War fading once the veterans go." You go, no, we want to double down. It's even more important.
That was really
great.
That was really interesting because it is a. I mean, we've talked about it a fair bit on the podcast. It is a thorny problem approaching, and people often ask, as the veterans all go, as we lose the direct present memory of those people, where's it all headed?
It's literally all the stuff we've been saying for the last few months.
Do you think he reads your Substack?
No.
Do you think someone reads your Substack for him? No. Again, I'm getting the thing I really in the last few years have wanted to try and get my head into is the sense that the Second World War, when it was happening, was now. It wasn't this sacred event 80 years ago.
No.
None of the protagonists making these momentous decisions had any idea what was round the corner.
Yep.
Often had no idea what their opposite numbers were planning.
I didn't know whether it was going to be over by Christmas.
No.
My fear at D-Day last year was everyone would be sort of going on a sort of mawkishness trip with the veterans because they're so few. And I thought, my worry is there's going to be that again this year. And and it didn't happen. It never felt mawkish at all. And the point is that global events are such at the moment that actually the lessons from the Second World War are there. That if you get it wrong and you end up at war, that is the cost.
Yeah.
And any future war could be even worse. So those are the stakes. So you can't faff about. If you want to be strong and secure and peaceful and preserve democracy, you've got to fight for it. You've got to be, the nation, the people have to be prepared to give up a few things to make that happen.
Yes, but you also need to figure out what the nation is, don't you? You need a common story,
yes, you do.
And you need a common sense of purpose, and those are tricky questions, aren't they?
Yeah.
Especially as an event like today is an opportunity to talk about that, about that, what that.
But we
might
are talking
mean.
about that, and that's what I think is really good.
Yeah, it's not swooning violins, it's not slow motion standards fluttering in a breeze and Reveille being played or whatever. It's that guardsman coming up and saying permission to start the parade.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely
right. He said whatever it was, you carry on or whatever, and that then you're immediately are now touching there now the two presents coming together and meeting in a way that isn't saccharine and that isn't packaged and that it is just a simple gesture and between soldiers which is after
old
all,
soldier, new soldier.
Is as ancient as men.
Yes, and there was a lovely line by Paddy O'Connell, who I was doing telecommentary with, and he said, he was once one of millions, and now he's one in a million.
Yeah,
and I thought, that's just
and
that's
I think
a good line.
Connecting. It's important, for our national sense, I suppose, to think about things like this. But certainly, when you're looking at the history, it's really important to think about they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's essential to think of it like that because so often, and we talked about this a lot with Victory 45 with the book, when you're actually looking at how people are making decisions, the tumult of events come at them, and the information they don't have is often much more important.
Second guessing that's going on.
Exactly. The information you don't have is usually much more important than the information you do have. You know, you grasp at the straw of the thing you know, rather than take into account the things you don't know. And that's what's going on at the end of the war as much as anything else. That's the thing I find so thrilling about studying history, and particularly the Second World War, is this, this torrent of contingency coming at you the entire time, which is what life is like. Real life isn't like history books. History books should be like real life.
Yeah.
It should be that way round. Well, I mean, it's interesting. America never came up. We talked about Zelensky and how impressive Zelensky was.
No, I tried to push him a little bit on.
Yeah, but he didn't go.
He
didn't go for it. He didn't bite on me saying actually Zelensky's a comedian. And after all, so if the nation is in true crisis, maybe Keir should be sat over here and I should be sat over there. So if the stuff really does,
you're an honorary colonel,
if the stuff hits the ventilation system, Jim, you can do a podcast with Keir Starmer, and I'll take us over as PM. We need a comedian in charge. I mean, I think one of the things.
It does mean you could wear olive drab.
But I think one of the things really interesting about Zelensky is because he's a guy who understands. He's a comedian. He's a TV star. He understands how media works, and that's quite clearly a big part of how well he's doing. And his favourite war movie, Saving Private Ryan.
Well, he obviously didn't grow up watching war movies with his dad.
No.
Absolutely not.
I felt quite generationally let down by that moment, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, imagine coming to your first war movie.
I mean, by the way, the spad who has to listen to this podcast, you need to pass on that next time we ask about a favourite war movie, the Prime Minister comes up with The Great Escape, at least. I mean, honestly.
But, he'd have been in his 30s when that came out. And that's his first war movie.
Yeah. There are families that don't watch television, aren't there?
Well,
there were, yeah.
Not anymore.
It's interesting that he says we didn't really watch telly.
What? So you never watched Kelly's Heroes?
So we never really watched TV because it would distract us and we'd never come to anything. Well, it worked out, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's like Truman's lack of ambition. Truman didn't want to be vice president,
and it worked.
Ends up being president.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was really interesting, and I've got to say, from my perspective, he was saying all the things I wanted to hear. Whether you can deliver that is another matter. But
yeah, many slip twixt cup and lip and all that. However, to be here on VE Day with the band's playing, the band's rehearsing in Horse Guards.
We're in number 10.
I know, we're in number 10.
Can you believe it?
They'll let anyone in these days, honestly.
But, outside is the garden, the Halifax Churchill conversation, and no one ever knows what happened.
Yes. What a day. What an interesting day. I mean, what I've tried not to do is I've tried to be not overexcited by this because it is very exciting. I've tried to sort of try and keep my powder dry and retain my scepticism and all that. But it's hard not to be to feel very privileged to have got in here. It's hard not to feel, he didn't need to do that, did he?
He didn't need to do that.
He's got more important things to worry about than you and me and what we think about rearmament or whatever. So I think,
Well, yeah. I guess. I think you should be listening to us personally. But anyway, it's very good of all the team here at Number 10 that let us in.
Thanks everybody for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, and not just to this one, for listening to a podcast that has attracted the attention of the British government. I mean, obviously the lads at the FSB listening to this now. We hope you enjoy it too.
Yeah, because the other thing we haven't mentioned is Russia.
No, exactly.
It's me, Dave.
Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you again soon. Cheerio.
Cheerio.